phones, any background noise, just to help with the clarity of the meeting. If someone is speaking, please let them finish. If an audience member wants to make a comment, please, there is a raise your hand button icon on the screen. You can hit that, or just give me an hum, and I'll call on you. There will be time at the end of the meeting for public comment, so we can take care of public comment at the end. So please try to hold off on public comment until the end. So that said, we get a quick roll call.
John's here.
Alex Ulmer, present.
Tim Ruth here.
All right, I dropped out there for a second. Tony, you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, thank you. Who do we have here from Moser?
And I'm sorry, Chris, Andy Enchett here also.
I'm sorry. All right, so we got everybody from Planning Commission. Who do we have from the Moser project?
Ed Moser's here.
Rachel Butch with Showalter.
Okay. How about the Beagle?
Yes,
Good
sir.
evening. Andrew Stolz, Mr. Beagle, and Mr. Smealand.
Mike Carr is also here on behalf of Moser. I am having a hard time figuring out whether I can hear myself or not, or whether you can hear me.
Yeah, you're very faint.
I will try to get closer to the microphone.
Yeah, it might help. All right, Steve Bally, you're with us. Steve, you here?
Yes, I am. I was having
There
problems
you
with
are.
the mic button. You got me?
And we have someone here from PRA.
I didn't see anybody on the list, but I could explain what the issue is for
Okay.
tonight's meeting.
Good enough. All right, and we have, I saw David Conlon was with us. Anyone else want to chime in? All right, so let's continue. First order of business is the approval of the minutes from our May 11th Planning Commission meeting. Anyone have any questions, concerns, corrections?
I have none.
I have none.
This is Andy. None.
This is John. I have none. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Can I get a
Alex,
second?
I'll
Alex?
second it.
All right, all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. All right, so first applicant on the agenda is Moser with two-lot subdivision, minor subdivision. You guys want to have someone explain your project to us here?
I'm happy to do that. This is 212 Augustine Road, 8.01 acres.
I'm sorry, is this Mike Carter?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're really faint.
I don't know how to fix that. I'll yell.
There you go. I was going to suggest that.
Yeah. Proposing two-lot subdivision. One of them is 2.1 acres, 2.01 acres, and 6 acres. It's been through the ringer over the years. There were allegations that it was illegally forested, and we don't dispute that or argue about any of that history. There were variance applications filed to get that approved. There was a reforestation application filed years ago. The current application is exceptionally straightforward, and we have a June 2nd, 2021 letter from Wynn that I'm happy to go through with you. I think perhaps it will lead to some discussion of the history, but essentially it's the two lots that I just described. And the first discussion item, number 1, refers to the fact that the reforestation effort was implemented and approved and apparently completed, but then ultimately failed. And there are deer fences around the property that have collapsed. And essentially the end of that comment says that the existing features plan should be revised to identify areas of significant tree growth and location of wire perimeter fence. My assumption is that when we get a little deeper into the letter, that comment with respect to the successful efforts to reforest this property need to be furthered and promoted, and we don't disagree with that. And the second item ties into this. There's a required 60% conservation easement on each of these lots, and I think the question that's going to get the most discussion this evening is going to be exactly what we can or can't do within that 60% of the lots. I had a conversation with Mary Everly this afternoon, and she tells me that there are no rules that specifically dictate what can or cannot happen within a conservation easement. And I'm pretty certain we can come to an understanding as to what the rules can and should be. The concern of my client is that, you know, he's selling a two acre lot that's got a septic system and a rain garden, you know, sort of stormwater area on it. And that lot is obviously, it's got a house in the front, and more than 60% is going to remain green, but it does have those two improvements in it. On the 8 acre lot, I'd like to understand what your thoughts are with respect to what kind of activities could take place. Obviously, we'll preserve the woodlands, if, you know, to the extent that there are any successfully regrown woodlands. But can we fence it? Obviously, we're not putting buildings in the conservation area. You know, could we have livestock or animals? And I know that the supervisors are going to listen closely to whatever your feelings are on that subject. Number 3 is a will comply. Number 4 describes the waivers, which are fairly straightforward, have to do with road improvements generally. Let me pull back up the review letter. Number 5 is a will comply. Number 6 is, to a certain extent, a comment. We're proposing street trees. There are existing trees and other vegetation, and we will identify and clarify existing vegetation and propose clearing. And if the large trees are to remain, they may be considered in lieu of some of the required street trees. We agree with that. That's a will comply. Stormwater management, Ed, unless you want to correct me, I believe that those are all will complies. 7A talks about applicant should provide verification and permission from Landis to complete swale grading on their property as indicated on the plan. If we need to work on the Landis property and they would like us to work on their property, we will endeavor to do so, but we're not in a position to accept a condition that we get that permission, because we're not in a position to actually get that permission if need be. So if need be, we will do all the swale grading on our property. All the other items are will complies. 8 through 14 are will complies. 15A through D are will complies, and 16 is a comment.
Chris, if I may, I'd like to go back to the stormwater question.
Yeah, you know what? I'm jumping in and out of my. So the challenge of hearing Mike's presentation here on my computer, I really didn't get to hear what was going on there, and I apologize for that. Mike, you're going to have to try something different, because I can barely hear you when I am online.
Your audio is in and out a little bit for me too. It's frustrating.
There's just no volume behind you.
I tested my microphone beforehand and it seemed okay.
Mike, maybe you want to try getting off and logging back in. See if that improves the connection.
I'm happy to try that.
Yeah, why don't you give that a shot?
You can also use the phone number and call in.
And I might have to do that tonight myself. Greg, if I do that, I can still stay on screen and just mute my mic.
Yeah, you can do both. You could be on the phone and still be on video, with a phone call.
All right. All right, give me a second, please.
I'm back. I wasn't.
Welcome to Google Meet. Enter the meeting pin followed by the pound key.
I'm back. Can you hear me any better?
Much better, Mike.
Okay, good.
Yeah, just give me a second. All right.
Chris is trying to call in by phone just to correct his problems. So we're going to wait a minute for that.
Thank you. You're muted because a lot of people are on this call. Press star 6 to unmute.
Chris?
All right, am I back good? Wow. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So I guess I'm going to listen to you through my phone now. All right. So, Mike, you're back running here?
I am. Thank you.
All right. So I think we need to circle back. Steve, I'm assuming that's what you want to do, circle back to item 2.
Yeah, well, let's just, I mean, so everyone's clear, since some people had some audio issues. Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think essentially you're indicating the entire engineering review letter is a will comply, except for, the caveat that the actual restrictions in the conservation easement area would have to be worked out. The waiver request will have to be reviewed. And to the extent that some swale regrading is shown on the Landis property, that may have to be moved on to the Moser property, but in one form or another, you'll still do that drainage work.
That's
Is that
exactly
fair
right.
assessment?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So if you're looking at the bottom of the plan, the water goes from the top to the bottom, and you can see at the very top of the plan there is a swale off of our property that kind of ends right where our house is proposed, and we're going to need to grab that water and move it past where the proposed house is on the big lot. And at the bottom of the property, we've got the rain garden, and then there's an existing elevation and sort of a swale that takes the water from behind the Leidy house down past the Leidy house towards the road. So we're doing what we can to keep the water away from the proposed houses and keep any water that comes into the rain garden to reduce in velocity and amount, and then get it past the Leidy house so that we're not causing anybody any problem.
Right. And that was a point of significant concern back in 2017, I guess it was, when this was submitted the last time. So this does go a long way to work on that issue, that eroded swale that comes from the Landis property through this property toward the Leidy house, actually, as it is today. But I just wanted to be clear, 'cause the grading is shown on Landis. That's why I had my comment. But you're suggesting that if you can't do it on the Landis property, you'll do that grading on the subject property to get the same effect.
That's our only option, right?
Well, this is Ed Moser. I don't necessarily think that's true. I think when we were out at the site visit in 2017, you can clearly see the water went down where we have the proposed swale. You can see that somebody went in with a machine and cut the swale onto our property, so the water ran down towards the Leidy property. So I'm not proposing to do a whole big swale all the way down our property in that conservation easement, because the swale was always above on the Landis property till somebody cut it through on this property. You can still see the way the backhoe and the dirt's thrown.
I'm not disagreeing with you arguing with you one way or the other. My only concern is that somehow we get the water redirected, and if you need permission to work on the Landis property, then that would.
Well, all that I would have to do is fill what they cut out, whoever cut that out on my property, and the water would just stay on the Landis property.
Okay, but that's not what's shown on the plan. That's what I'm saying. What's shown on the plan is more grading than that on the Landis property. That's why I made the comment. If there's a way to do it easier, I'm certainly open to that.
I think the swale was a result as of that site meeting that we were going to try and work something out.
Okay.
If they're opposed to it, I just would have to remove that grading.
It's hard for me to tell, but is there a Landis representative here?
I don't believe there is.
So what I'm saying is, if we can work together with Landis's, we absolutely will. If we can't work, we have no choice but to address it on our property.
Have you reached out to Landis?
No.
Is something you're willing to do?
Yeah, of course, I would certainly do it. We wanted to see our reaction, what's going on here tonight. I don't want to go to them and make all these plans and then come back and find it's not something that the Planning Commission wanted to see.
Understood. All right. So if we
I
go
could
back
come-
to
if
item
I
number
could-
2.
1 second. Our potential impact is water coming from the top, from Landis to us, to Leidy. And I think we've got Leidy addressed pretty effectively.
Yeah, and that's a big concern that you do. And I know they're here with us tonight. So anyway, I would suggest reaching out to Landis if the Planning Commission is agreeable to let you move forward with your plan. And try to get that worked out. The item number 2 with what you're allowed to be doing with your conservation easement property. I mean, Steve, what is the thoughts with the septic systems on there?
Sorry, I was muted there for a minute. That was my concern of whether or not that reserve area would be permissible. I did not have the opportunity to speak to Mary Everly regarding this question. Obviously, Mr. Carr did, so I don't have her feedback on that.
Mary and I had a conversation wherein I think it's fair to say my question was, we're not putting buildings back there. It's going to be permanently preserved as open space, but something like a fence around the property, or stormwater improvement, or a septic system is in my experience typically permitted in a conservation area that's not to be built. Ed's concern is obviously that, or maybe it's not that obvious. If you're not allowed to take a tractor or a mower or anything back there, and you're just required to let it grow up as scrub, that these are hard lots to sell. These folks are buying significant, in relative term, pieces of property, and they'd like to be able to use them to a certain extent, be it for passive or active recreation or livestock or something like that. The septic system and the rain garden, I don't think, are contrary to the purpose and intent of the thoughts behind requiring that they be conserved. Those are pretty passive features.
Well, you have excluded the sand mound, the primary system for lot 2,
That's
but not the conservation, not the backup system. So that was one of my questions. And I mean, in general concept, I would agree with you that, you know, we have a lot of conservation easements in the township where people are allowed to, you know, certain activities within the conservation easement. I guess what we need to work on here a little bit more is, you know, part of the reason for this conserved area was the revegetation plan. You know, as you indicated, I wouldn't say it failed, but it, you know, certainly wasn't 100% successful. There are areas where the vegetation is better than others, and I certainly wouldn't suggest that the township, you know, go down the route where somebody wants to farm the property or put a horse pasture in and they cut down the vegetation that we tried to reestablish.
Yeah, we're on the same page there.
There are areas that are more open than others, and certainly, you know, there might be activities that they could use those for.
And
And there is
the
an
conclusion
area for those activities that's not part of the decision made by the zoning hearing back in 2003.
Well, I'm going to defer to Mary on that as to what's required under that zoning issue from 2003 and what, you know, that would allow them to do or not do.
Right. Yeah, I'd like to hear her opinions on that.
and if I may, the upshot of the conversation with Mary was the planning commission is going to have feelings about this, and the supervisors are likely to take, you know, their recommendation quite seriously, and you're just going to have to, you know, do your job and argue for what may or may not be allowed back there. We're not looking for anything other than generally maintaining the areas as opposed to leaving them to go wild. And Steve's comment with respect to the successful reforestation is well taken. We're not looking to cut down any successful reforestation.
All right. So Steve, you have not talked to Mary at all about this?
Not the conservation easement issue, no.
Right.
But I think what Mr. Cart indicated is fair. If the planning commission has a particular concern of things that should be or shouldn't be allowed, you know, it would be appropriate to voice that so we could, you know, speak with Mary and incorporate it in the documents if necessary.
Well, I don't know that I have an opinion on what should be allowed without any other input. You know, I'm concerned about violating the zoning hearing decision by what we would allow. I mean, I'm not opposed to allowing anything on this property. I don't want a contradiction to the decision.
I would go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, this is Tim. I mean, there's already, you know, permitting issues with regard to like removal of trees. What is it, over 6 trees, 2 inches or greater, you need a permit for anyway, Steve? So I don't know that the, you know, removal of trees is really gonna be a big issue. I mean, if they're buying the property, they're buying the property. So I mean, at that point, it's property owner rights as long as it's within the conservation easement. And remember, you know, deforestation standpoint, you have the permitting process anyway, right?
Well, yes, we have forestry permit requirements and clearing issues, which is, you know, what this property ran into way back when.
So the township has mechanisms in order to enforce, you know, not clearing it. But yet at the same time, even if people buy the property, I mean, it's, you know, it's their property, but it has a conservation easement on it, but they could use it, I would think, you know, in any manner they saw fit, other than, like I said, buildings or what have you, as long as it doesn't run afoul of the, you know, the forestation issues.
That's kind of what we were hoping to hear.
Well, that's just my opinion. So you got. So.
I understood.
This is Alex. I guess I haven't seen the zoning hearing board. I wasn't around when that decision was made. My first read of this seems to be that 60% is to conserve a conservation easement for wooded area, which I agree would not include buildings, but I would also think wouldn't include anything that would impact those trees. I I think I'm kind of with Stephen or with Chris in that I'd like to know a little bit more about what the zoning hearing board was intending when they made that easement, because I also do agree with Tim that, it's their property. They should be able to use it as they see fit. Now, if that means you got to leave all the trees standing, but then you can do anything you want in between them, again, I don't see a problem with that.
Any other planning commission members have comment on this?
This is Andy. Not much to add other than the comp plan doesn't give much direction on the conservation easement at all, other than, to maintain open space or agricultural use and protect it from almost all development. So long as what, doesn't run afoul of, again, back to that zoning hearing comment, I don't have much to go on really either way.
This is John. I have similar thoughts. I suggest probably as an action item for the planning commission, maybe we should put pen to paper and write up the guidelines. But I would agree with both Tim and Alex that those guidelines should be fairly much along the lines of the property owner owns the property. They should be allowed to do, I'll say almost anything they want with it, but spell out what that almost entails. So it feels less arbitrary going forward.
In my experience, conservation easement is generally to create a building envelope, dictate what activities can have in that building envelope, maybe create the opportunity for some, guest house or something, not like we're talking about that here. But then generally say the remainder of the property is preserved for the following purposes, and the following activities are allowed and the following activities are prohibited. And generally speaking, on behalf of the developer, we understand no development, no subdivision, no buildings. But let's, hash out the details. And I'm happy to do that with Mary. Let us put a reserve septic area, let us fence it, let us put a horse out there or something like that. Maybe a run-in shed. I don't know. But maybe not a run-in shed. Depends on, where we wind up.
All right. Well, I'm certainly not opposed. If she doesn't have a problem putting your septic area out there, I don't have a problem with that. And I don't want to restrict this too heavily. I just want to know what the zoning hearing board had as their intentions with this decision. It sounds like the planning commission is willing to entertain any of this. So I would plan on moving forward from here and waiting to hear back from what conversation we had with Mary to see how restrictive or non-restrictive this conservation easement is. I don't think we're trying to hog-tie you here by any stretch.
I appreciate that. And my thoughts as to a recommendation, including a recommended condition, would be that the applicant's attorney and the township solicitor attempt to work out a conservation easement that contains like appropriate permitted and prohibited uses for the consideration of the board.
Right.
Mike, do you have any mapping that shows where the few areas where reforestation was successful are located?
I don't have it in front of me. Steve probably does, but his comment suggests that maybe he doesn't. And one of the will comply items was to delineate that. And we're happy to do that.
I think that might help us a lot.
Yeah, I don't have anything specific. I mean, I've been on the property at different times, and I know, where some of the areas are, but no, we've never made an attempt to map them out.
And if we've successfully reforested portions of this property, we will delineate it and then defer to Steve to agree that we're delineating it properly.
All right. Well, I'm not in disagreement with the verbiage you suggested, Mike, for a condition. So what do we need to move forward here, Steve?
Well,
Basically will comply with everything you've got noted.
yeah, I think we want to talk about waivers, at least generally, to make sure if you are in agreement with waiving, the kind of standard curb and sidewalk and road widening issues, or whether they have to redesign the plan to add that back in. So I think we should touch on those. I think there's a waiver request list attached to the letter.
Yeah, so the first item is the lot line. So we have irregular lot line going to the rear of the lot.
Yeah, that's not a big deal.
Right. I mean, we've done this many a time. I don't have a problem with that. And then the second is the street frontage improvements. Obviously, we don't need curb and sidewalk out here. At least I think we don't need curb and sidewalk out here. You had suggested a swale. Did I see that somewhere?
Yeah, well, I did suggest that they regrade the roadside swale so it's back away from the edge of the road some, to give us a little bit of a shoulder on the edge of the road. Not a paved shoulder, but a few feet level area with the swale a little bit further away from the edge of the road.
I see Ed nodding. I'm pretty sure we're okay with that.
What number is that on your review?
Number 4.
All right. There we go. All right. So, Mike, you're all right with the swale regrading that Steve is suggesting?
Yep.
And then you want to do the fee in lieu up for the other waivers?
That would be our requested recommendation. Yes.
Any input from the planning commission members?
This is Tim. I'm fine with that.
Alex, I am as well.
Andy, okay?
John, okay.
All right. So what do we need to keep moving here, Steve?
Well, I mean, it really boils down to 2 main issues. The stormwater management, which, I had several comments. I believe they could address them, but it's a matter of getting them addressed. And that stormwater leads toward, resolving the issue up there at Landis, whether they could get permission or have to modify that grading a little bit. But that's a significant question, especially, with the adjoining owners are interested in that question also. That it's been an issue for several years. Right. And then the conservation easement and getting, comfortable with that language.
All right.
I believe that you have some letters from the adjoining property owner too. I believe they were distributed to the planning commission members.
Yeah, we received from the Lighties. I think that's the only one we received.
Yes.
We should have all had time to review that. And I apologize. We have you scheduled, Mrs. Leidig, for public comment, which would be at the end. All right. So, well, first of all, why don't we get a vote on the waiver request letter? Get that out of the way. We need a motion to approve the waiver request with condition on the suggested swale regrading. Can someone make that motion?
This is Tim. I'll make that motion.
I guess that.
John, I'll second it.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, so there's your waiver request taken care of for you. So as far as the conservation easement question, like I said before, Mike, I think you had a good suggestion. If we're going to move forward with giving you a conditional or referral, then I think the word the verbiage that you had used would be appropriate to address this issue. We can approve this, conditionally approve this, you guys can hash it out with the solicitor. Does that make sense, everyone?
Well, Chris, this is Steve. I was just going to say, with this just being a minor subdivision, essentially it's a preliminary final approval. So if the Planning Commission does intend to act on a conditional approval, you will not see it again. So if the desire of the Planning Commission to understand the conservation easement and how the drainage is fixed before, and have input on that again, I'd say you wouldn't want to make a recommendation on it this month. If you're comfortable allowing that to be resolved with the Board of Supervisors, then that would be the opposite.
All right.
For what it's worth, my thought was if you had any strong feelings about what should or should not be permitted in the conservation easement that you wanted to pass along to the board, that you could express that. It seems like we're all kind of on the same page. I'm not 100% sure that everyone was heard from, but that by and large, as long as there's no building going on out there, that the property owner should be allowed to do as they will with the property, other than eliminate forests. And with that said, you could make a recommendation using those words that says, have Mary and Mike hash out a document to that effect and then act on it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really given a whole lot of thought as to what should be allowed on your conservation easement before this meeting. I was more concerned about whether you're going to allow a secondary septic system on it. So, I mean, I certainly didn't do my homework on what should be allowed. And then again, what the intention of the zoning hearing decision was.
This is Tim. Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that this, property is subject to a prior zoning hearing board decision, and not knowing exactly what was in that decision or what the intent of that decision was, I think the majority of the members are probably in the same boat as to wanting to see that or at least get some input on that.
I read that decision today, and what happened was the prior owner of the property went out there, decided she was going to create a horse farm, and essentially clear cut a property that was entirely wooded. The township issued an enforcement notice saying you didn't conform to any of the requirements of our ordinances with respect to the removal of forests. And they applied for variances. The variances were denied. The enforcement notice was upheld, and an order was put in place ordering the reforestation of the whole property. And that order was complied with, and an effort was made to reforest this property, and it was ultimately signed off on. The township has a few years to say, yay or nay, this has worked. And the township said, yes, this has worked. And then over the years, no one took any steps to undo the reforestation, but some of it worked and some of it didn't work. And so in my view, that issue is behind us. The property is as it is right now, and we're not looking to take down successful reforestation. We're not looking to complete unsuccessful reforestation, and we don't believe that we have an obligation to do so. And so I'm sort of just suggesting that we take the property as it is today and deal with it that way.
This is John. I agree with that. I think, if there was some decisions that were made in the past, they were based on the conditions of the property at the time. At this point, you can't go back and undo or redo what happened in the past. So I agree. We should just take the property as it is and deal with it as it is today.
Steve, is that your understanding as to pretty much what happened? I mean, is there anything in that zoning hearing decision that's may be different than that? I mean, if that's the case, yeah, I agree with that as well. I'm just saying if there's something in that zoning hearing decision that we go against would be my concern.
Well, I'll caveat my answer a couple ways. One, I haven't read the decision recently. I have read it, but not recently. In general, I think the big picture, what Minister Carr says is generally accurate. the conservation easement is probably more a function of the natural resource protection standards that come into play because of the subdivision, more so than the zoning issue. It just on this particular property, it's of interest because of the past history of the property of what has happened. The disadvantage you have tonight is that we don't have Mary Eberly here at the meeting to give her input directly of what she thinks about the conservation easement areas.
But I think part of that was that I made a fair characterization of the zoning.
Yeah, that was generally the timeline of how it had happened. That is correct.
So then would it be reasonable to just leave the final wording of that to Mike and Mary to figure out based on Mary's knowledge and her experience with what happened in the past and how the previous zoning decision may impact this effort today, and then just let them work it out as part of the final details?
John, this is Alex. I would agree to that completely, but I kind of sounded to me like Mary was saying that was really for us to decide, not her.
I would take that not that literally. I think
Okay.
I would interpret Mary. Knowing Mary, I would think she would say something to the effect that certainly she'd like to know what restrictions the Planning Commission was considering before she wrote a conservation easement regarding the property. But so certainly, yeah, she would want the Planning Commission's input on any restrictions that you felt were applicable or desirable on this property.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't think of any, other than what would be in that zone.
Right.
Would we be willing to allow any building of any type, whether it be a shed or anything else within that area?
Well, I think that's governed by the restrictions of the conservation easement, not, which I know are somewhat vague, but I'm just saying, it is just a recommendation. The supervisors do have the final say as to whether or not it gets approved.
If I had a buyer who wanted to make a little 8-acre horse farm who said, I want 2 run-in sheds, I'd be in here in front of you guys saying, I would like 2 run-in sheds back there. But we don't have that buyer. We just have this imaginary buyer who probably wants to use their property as freely as possible. But if you say no run-in sheds, we can sell this. If you say put in an indoor, we can sell this. I don't expect you to go for the latter, but we would like to be able to maintain it to the extent that it's not woodlands. Is the important part, and maybe fence it. We're not looking to put a pool back there or a barn or anything else.
There's plenty of fences on conserved properties, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I'd have any objection to a fence.
I wouldn't have that. As long as it's on the property.
Well, I would be fine with letting it move forward without seeing that. If that's what it was, and I just was concerned that there was some kind of other caveats in the zoning hearing decision. That was my concern.
That was mine as well. I don't think I have an issue with moving forward and letting them hash out an agreement with Mary on this. I don't have any specific input on how to restrict the conservation easement on this property.
I don't know that I want to put any other restrictions on it other than what a conservation easement allows you or not allows you to do.
Right.
Chris, could I make one other suggestion?
Yeah.
If it does seem to be the Planning Commission's leaning towards making a recommendation on this tonight, and since the Lighties are present, maybe it'd be a good idea to get their input before you took any action on the plan.
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree. So, Mrs. Whitey, you want to read your letter or improve upon your letter?
Okay. I took my mic off. Can you hear me now?
Loud
I
and
can.
clear.
Okay. Do you want me to read the letter since you already have a copy of it?
I don't think you need to, but if you have any additional input, we'll certainly listen.
Yeah, and my husband's sitting right here aside of me too. And our main concern with this whole lot is, first, we are not opposed to it being developed. However, we want to make certain that the runoff water issue is taken care of, and that we would like to see the conservation easement. What is that? And what is preventing that from abuse like it was in the past? You know the history of this lot. It was clear cut in a matter of a day or two. And since then, we've had water issues that have eroded through our field, and we have hired our own civil engineer to look over the plans to make sure that we are covered as far as the runoff water onto our property. And in our letter, we also addressed the garden where that drains out. That's coming and draining out on our property again. So those, I think, are our main issues, are the runoff water, and what is the conservation easement? What is that used for? Are they going to be able to come in and cut down the trees that are already there? Are they going to be able to put other things back there, other buildings, other sheds and all that kind of stuff? Or is it going to be conservation and taken care of as a conservation? So that's where we are. Do you have anything to add, Terry?
No, the biggest problem we've run into is that we have a lot of water that comes right basically down within I'd say, I'm thinking it's about 30 feet almost to our property, our house. And if we get the kind of weather we're having this year, we're getting a lot right now still.
Mm-hmm. So we're still dealing with the issues that were never addressed back in 2003 when this lot was clear cut, and all of a sudden we have all this water on us. I'm not sure if our civil engineer, Rick Mass, is on or not. He thought he might join the meeting tonight. Here, he might have some things to add. Okay.
He is with us. He raised his hand.
Okay, you can let him address some of the issues that we're facing.
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to figure out how to unmute myself. So Mrs. Lady spoke very well about the issues. They are encouraged that some positive steps are being made, but they certainly want assurances that they will be implemented. The grading on the Landis property, whether it's done on the Landis property or done on the Moser property, that's really something that's good for both properties, for the Lady property and the Moser property, that situation be corrected. And now's the time to do it. And there's also some concern about the outlet point of the rain garden. Presently, it is not a place of concentrated outlet like the plan is now proposing. So we would just ask that some consideration be given to creating some sort of a level spreader there to spread out the drainage flow compared to how it is on the plan today. It's not a significant change to what it is, but would again protect the Ladies' property from being eroded through the field, which they currently farm for hay production. So if the Planning Commission was in a frame of mind to offer a recommendation of approval tonight, then certainly they would want those issues to be conditions of the approval to be assured that they're addressed.
So Mike or Steve, do you have any input on this?
I don't disagree with anything I've just heard. Our endeavor was to slow down or prevent the water that's coming from the hill above us to impact our property, and then to capture and slow down the water that does come onto our property, and then discharge it in a way that doesn't have any adverse impact on Leidy. And I think where we're taking it out of the rain garden, and I'm no engineer, but I think I can read contours. We've moved it into the swale that currently exists closer to Augustine Road, and thereby eliminated some of the potential impact on Leidy's house. And if Rick disagrees, I'd be open to that. But his suggested conditions are appropriate in my mind.
And this is Steve again. I have had the opportunity to talk about this plan with Rick, and I think our comments are, pretty much in line with what his concerns are. It's just a matter of getting some of these details addressed on the plan.
And I think we're addressing the rain garden on the back of the property. It's actually on lot 1 where it comes out onto our property. Is that where you're talking about too?
That's what we're talking about, yeah.
Okay.
That's correct.
Mike, would there be any issue extending that pipe a little bit to get past the replacement septic area and then putting a level spreader in?
I didn't even know it was a pipe, but no, that's not an issue.
Rick, would that address the concerns you were having?
Yes, it would.
Step, come back down here and I need help.
This is Ed Moser. I mean, you're talking about running that pipe another 200 feet. That's going to be almost a 500-foot run of pipe. I mean, you're asking me to really do a lot here, and I think that would be. I mean, we walked the site and we took the pipe as far as we needed to, and saw the natural drainage the way it went, and I agreed to that before. A lot of this water is coming from above us, from somebody that installed a pipe to direct the water down. And really, historically, we're talking about these total woodlands, but if you go on the Planning Commission, you can look back 25 years, and that was a cornfield. So if you let your property go, trees grow and all of a sudden it's a forest, you can't do something with it. So I think we're really trying to do something here to work out a good situation for all of us. But there's a lot of improvements for two little houses.
Well, my suggestion would be that our engineer and Rick work out a solution that works for everybody. I don't want to rechannelize or increase any flow that goes onto the Leidy property. There's not an engineering solution available right in front of us tonight. We need to put something on a plan that we're all comfortable works.
We already have an erosion problem there from the lot being clear cut. When they mow that area, they have to be really careful with the tractor because it dips down and that the tractor doesn't dip over. So there is already an erosion problem in that area that cuts right across both of our fields. So this is why we really don't like the placement of that. And that was caused when the lot was clear cutted.
I think it's safe to say that the situation is going to be improved as a result of what we're doing. That's what we're looking to accomplish, and that's what we're required to accomplish.
And that's what we're asking.
So why don't we somehow let these our engineer and your engineer and Ed's engineer together on this and come up with a solution. I mean, obviously this has been a problem for you, and it's something that we want to see go away. And it sounds like they are after the same objective. So why don't you let them hash it out? If that makes sense to everyone.
Chris, you suggesting hash it out and bring it back, or just hash it out?
Yeah, no, it can't happen tonight. So I think this is something we're going to have to wait to hear back on, unfortunately.
I think if Showalter and Rick say to Steve, here's the solution that we've arrived at, and we can go to the supervisors if Steve agrees that it's okay. If we can't hash something out, then we should be back in front of you. But I'm all for it.
We got a lot of hashing to do on this one.
I don't think it's a huge issue. Ed doesn't want to run 500 feet of unnecessary pipe, and I get that. But
yeah,
if we can work out a middle ground, it should be in front of the supervisors without further ado.
What do you think about that, Steve?
Well, one way or another, it's going to have to satisfy me and Rick on behalf of the ladies.
Right.
Won't recommend it at the Board of Supervisors, but it's the Planning Commission's discretion whether you want to see that before you move it on to the supervisors or not.
Well, you're probably not going to make this month's supervisors meeting. So before the next supervisors meeting, there's a planning commission meeting already there. So I don't think it costs you any more time to bring it back to this group and then still have enough time to make the August supervisors meeting.
Yeah, I mean, were you planning on getting on next week's supervisor meeting?
We were not.
Okay.
We've got some plan work to do.
Well, I think John has a point. Why don't you see if you can get this worked out for next month's planning commission meeting, and hopefully going to wrap it up for you. Hopefully get on the August supervisor meeting.
But my feeling when it comes to stormwater issues is, I don't know whether any of y'all on the planning commission have specific expertise, but if the engineers are all in agreement, it's not the kind of thing that should require another meeting.
Well, we have we have resident concerns as well. So, I think there's some other issues there that we as a planning commission would like to be more comfortable with, is my thought. In general, I'm fine with the plan. I just, we have to take into account, all the residents of the township.
No, I appreciate all the feedback we've gotten tonight, and I understand, and we're going to live with whatever decision you make. But I'm always going to argue that we should move along. So, do as you will.
Well, Mike, I think as John pointed out, it's not going to hold you up. It's also going to give us a chance to resolve the issue with the grading on the Leidy versus the Moser property, and also get a little more input on the conservation easement.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to have you come back in next month and hopefully you get this stuff worked out for us.
Well, I'm going to go to Mary and characterize the conversation that's happened tonight, and you'll get to see the upshot of what comes out of that, and you can agree or disagree that we've accomplished the ends that you're trying to achieve, and we'll try to address the other issues as well. I do appreciate the consideration.
Right. All right, so we'll table this until next month. Is there any other conversation needed on this?
I don't think so.
All right. We need to vote to table this.
I think a consensus is fine.
Yeah,
All right.
we understand where we are.
All right.
I agree.
Members.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm good with
very
table.
much. Appreciate your time. Good evening.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good evening.
All right. We'll see you next month. Thank you.
Yep.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. lost my agenda. I'm pretty sure it's Beagle next. I just can't find my agenda.
Yes, it's Beagle.
Beagle project. Somebody want to give us an overview of what you're planning?
Yes, good evening. Andrew Stahl, I'm the attorney for the applicant. With me here tonight is John Beagle. Also is the applicant's engineer, Jason Smealand. Essentially what we have is an existing non-conforming use. It's an auto repair facility located on the property. We're looking to install 2 additional storage facilities or storage buildings on the property. We do have a presentation prepared. If we can just have Mr. Smealand share his screen, we can walk you through that.
Okay.
Let me see if I can get this. Oh, I gotta allow this. Give me 1 second here. There we go. Can everyone see that?
It's loading. There it is.
Yes.
All right. So the property is 904 Ridge Road. And I'm Jason Smealand with Lenape Valley Engineering, the engineer for Mr. Beagle. Next plan here we have is the zoning map, and you can see that we're located in the Village Commercial District off of Ridge Road, actually right down the street from the township building. You can see Village Commercial pretty much all around us and some Village Residential behind us. We're at a place in the township that does not have very good access or any access to public water and sewer. And that is definitely a difficulty for this site and any kind of development in here. Village Commercial allows a lot of different types of uses, residential and commercial, kind of mixed types of uses here. In this case, the plan that we have, this is the sketch plan that was submitted. We have the existing auto repair shop up here in the front. I'm sure you're all familiar with this. And then residential dwelling also out on the front on Ridge Road. And I guess it was about 2 years ago, the applicant had made an application to build a garage in the back, needed variance zoning relief from the building height as an accessory building, and that was constructed. So they're kind of the light, darker brown buildings. And what we're proposing is to install 2 new buildings similar to the one that was already installed. They just be slightly bigger, about 7 feet in each direction. In the back, and then of course all the stormwater management. Next plan here is just the plan overlaid on an aerial, so you can get a better feel for what's around us. We have some residential properties next to us, commercial on the other side of us, and also some residential to the back. The proposed use is pretty low key in terms of having people or activity at the site. Here's some pictures here that show the existing building. It turned out very nice. Some pictures of what the buildings look like on the inside. You can see that the cars are parked in there. And then there's a couple other pictures of some charitable things that John Beagle does with related to cars and whatnot. And these are just some blow-ups of those. So really, what we really wanted to talk to you about is kind of just familiarize you with the project and what we're proposing. We have a existing non-conforming use. Auto repair shop is not permitted in the Village Commercial Zoning District, but it's an existing use that's there. And the direction that we're getting from township staff is that adding these accessory buildings would constitute a expansion of a non-conforming use, which would at a minimum require a special exception and possibly a variance, since the actual floor area would be more than 25%. You can expand a non-conforming use by 25%, but if you go beyond that, special exception requirement is needed. So it looks like we're going to be taking a trip to the zoning hearing board But before we did that, we wanted to discuss the whole project with you and the concept and make sure that there's a comfort level from the township's perspective that you agree this is a good use for the property. And that way we can take your input and incorporate any comments that you may have potentially and have a better discussion with the zoning hearing board. So, really that's it. These are essentially storage buildings that are accessory to the non-conforming use. Cars will basically be there while they're waiting for parts or waiting to go to an auction. There really isn't going to be much in terms of traffic in and out of this place. There'll be a little bit of activity up in the front, but I don't know how familiar you are with it. I've driven past it many times, and I've not really ever seen anyone outside there. So it's definitely low key. Some of the difficulties with this site, not having access to public water and sewer, but also being a fairly significant size site. There's not a lot of development opportunities for this. And of course, having buildings that don't have people makes sense in an area where public water or sewer are not available. Also, I've been working with Mr. Beagle for a couple of years now, and it seems to me that everything he does well. Turns out well. He puts a lot of effort into making things look nice and keeping things up. So I think he would be a good neighbor here. And we have the review comments. I guess the majority of them would be will complies. We have to work with township staff on our application to the zoning hearing board. But I'm thinking that if we were to make it through the zoning hearing board and on to the next phase, we would either be in for a waiver of land development or, kind of a light land development process at that point. So you would, get to see this project again. So really, we just want to introduce you to the project and get your thoughts and opinions on it. And, hopefully, if we get good feedback, move along to the zoning hearing board, make our application and start making this project move.
If I could just piggyback off that one bit, though this is a car repair and auto repair facility, it's not like an auto repair facility as you'd see, say, at a Sunoco, where you drop your car off in the morning, you pick it up in the afternoon, and during the day they're fixing it. It's a high-end auto repair facility. So a lot of the storage that's on the site will be to, the car may stay there while they're ordering like the unique parts for these antique cars that they fix up. So it's not your typical auto repair facility. If there are questions as to the nuts and bolts, Mr. Beagle is here, but this is not an auto repair facility that we're going to expand and just generate a ton more traffic or things like that.
Are you still using the building along Ridge Road for repair work?
The original, the building out front, the original building.
Yeah.
I do a lot of interior repair on these cars and a lot of cosmetic, repair like wet sanding, that sort of thing, out front in that older building. And the majority of cars in that building are stuff that is kind of in process and waiting for parts, that sort of thing.
Right. Are these mostly antique cars?
There's a lot of antiques. The majority of them would be considered like classic cars, a lot of 60s, 70s muscle cars.
Right. Yeah. So one of the questions was whether this was still a viable business, I guess, an active business in that facility. So it is. So, obviously, if you want to do what you want to do there, you're going to have to go through zoning hearing, and you know that. I don't know what other input we can give you tonight, other than you have to go through zoning hearing if you want to try to pull this off. The second building is constructed, correct? The brown, the one that's shaded brown?
Yeah, the darker brown one is there currently.
Can you see that from the road?
You can. It's it's kind of behind there, so it's kind of shielded by the other building, and there's also some trees in between, so it's not obvious. I know because I drive past there and I look for it, but it's not particularly obvious to see it.
If you look for it, you can see it.
Right.
And you got relief for that building as well?
Yeah, that building needed relief at that time. It was considered an accessory building, and we needed zoning relief. I actually wasn't involved in that application, but I know the project. There was zoning relief for the building height for that. But now at this point, with the extra building and being associated with the auto use, it's expansion of a non-conforming use.
Is the intended use of the two new buildings the same as the one that was previously built?
The building that Jason was talking about that we just put up, the majority of my actual cars are in that building. I was using it for storage just in my own personal collection. As I got rid of cars, we had other cars from other customers come in there. So the intent of, I guess, the additional buildings would be to coincide with the use of the original building out front, which is where I have the auto repair.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, John. This is the original approvals were basically, geared around that just being strictly a storage building for his personal use. And now this seems to be a little bit more of a comprehensive use of the property, where you are doing some auto repairs in the original auto repair building, and you'll be able to, whether you're storing parts or storing cars waiting for repair in the two new storage buildings in the back.
Correct.
You had mentioned wet sanding. Do you paint on the property, or are you intend to bring a spray booth into this property?
No painting on the property. I actually have a body shop down in Telford, Thornton's, who does all the painting on the cars.
And as far as number of employees, what do you expect any given time that there's people on the site?
I would say three to five.
Is that on a daily basis, or is that just some days there's that many people and other days there's nobody?
I couldn't imagine all five being there at one time. I'd have to say an average of probably about 2 to 3 a day.
Thank you.
What is the water and sewer situation there?
So right now, there's a well and then a holding tank. So we think that will be within the permits for the existing tank, because it's not really adding a whole lot in terms of employees. It's mostly accessory and just building space, not necessarily more employees.
How big is the holding tank?
That I don't know. John, do you know what that is?
I think it's 300.
Oh, so more than that.
Yeah, we probably will have to look at that, and as we get through it. But you're allowed up to 800 gallons per day under a holding tank permit for non-residential, and then so 800 for this site, and we will be significantly under that. So we know that we can qualify for the holding tank permit.
Right.
You said not necessarily more employees. Do you plan on additional employees, or don't plan on additional employees?
I don't plan on any additional employees. I'm 51. I'm not looking to really, I'm starting to get towards the end of my career, not at the beginning. So there won't be any additional employees.
Thank you.
Is there water proposed in the two additional buildings? Like sink, that type of thing, bathrooms?
I would be able just to use the front building. The other two buildings would just be more for just storing stuff that would eventually just get worked on up front.
Is the house on a separate septic system or a holding tank? Or is that tied to the same one as the shop?
I believe they're two different holding tanks.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead, I'm sorry, Andy. Go.
Is the height of the two new proposed buildings the same as the first?
Yeah, we're anticipating they'll be the same height, 21 feet.
Thank you.
Mr. Beagle, do you live next door there?
No, my mother-in-law does.
Okay. All right, so you're saying everything is going to be well complied that Steve has listed here?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, well, actually, yes, everything will ultimately be will comply. Obviously, as we come through the land development process, we're going to have to talk about, street trees and buffering exactly what we're doing. But, our intent, I'm looking through this list and saying everything here, we believe that we can address it, maybe not to the letter, but to the satisfaction of the planning commission and the township engineer. There'll obviously be some discussion items about exactly what kind of plants we're going to be planting in the buffer. What can we, count as trees that are preserved and adequate for buffering? It might be a little challenging to get some street trees in here with some of the existing improvements. So, things like that, there may be some discussion items, but in general, our intent is to make a really nice improvement to this property and, just use it a little more to its potential, given its limitations without public water and sewer.
All right. So what do you actually need from the planning commission this evening? I mean, you got to go through zoning hearings, so we'll see you again if you get released.
Really what we were looking for is just to make sure that you didn't look at us and think that we were doing something crazy here, and that you would agree that this is something that would be good for the township, or at least not detrimental. And really just to get your comments. It's always nice to go to the go to the zoning hearing board, and if we get through that, come to a planning commission that at least, wasn't opposed to the project. So I'm not sensing that anyone has any major concerns about it. I guess that's the sense I'm getting from the questions, but really, no particular action, just kind of your input and thoughts on the proposed use.
All right. So do any planning commission members have any comments or questions?
This is John. I'm fine.
This is Alex. I'm fine.
Andy, okay.
This is Tim. Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm anxious to hear what zoning hearing has to say. If you can get through them, I think you'll get through us.
No, that's what we were hoping we would hear, and we just wanted some confirmation before we got too far.
Yep, understood.
All right, good. Drew, you have anything else to add?
No, that's it. And I appreciate your time, and we're looking forward to making this a success.
Steve, do you have anything else to add?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see if you come back.
Thank you, everyone.
Hope to see you again in a couple of months. Thanks.
Hey. All right. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Moving on. Next agenda item is old business. The only thing I would have would be, well, Steve's, do we have anything pending we need to be aware of?
Did you skip an item?
Probably. Did I skip an item? No. I'm on old business. I don't think that's.
No, there's no plans that require action at this time.
Looks, Eastern Montgomery was coming back in.
Yeah, they didn't do their adjoining property owner notifications in time, so we pushed them off till next month.
Okay.
I have the review done, but we wanted to make sure that any neighbors that wanted to attend the meeting had ample opportunity to know about it in advance.
All right. So, well, I have no other old business. Anyone else have old business? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to new business, and that is Penridge Regional Authority. So Steve,
that was the item I was thinking of.
What's that, John?
I said that was the item I was thinking of as being the next item.
Yeah. No, I found my agenda, and we're going in the right order. So, Steve, you want to handle this?
Yeah, I was just looking at the attendees list again. I don't see anybody here.
Yeah.
So I think you guys are probably somewhat aware of this, if not fully aware from just attending some of the supervisors meetings. In general, PRA wants to extend public sewer from where it ends now, generally at the police station, up to Mountain View Road. And that line would have the potential to go a little bit further to the bypass, but their initial construction, they weren't proposing that. It was strictly from the police station to Mountain View Road. They've been going back and forth with the board regarding connections, mandatory connections or not mandatory, and eventually came to an agreement that's generally not, there will be no mandatory connection ordinance, but they do have financing in place for property owners and other incentives for people to connect. And we know that there's some failed septic out in that area. So I think they're going to get pretty many people to connect right up front. The glitch came when they got DEP involved. DEP said, even though this is in a sewer service area per our Act 537 plan that we adopted, was it 2011-ish? And we, identified this area for Percy Regional Authority to serve. We didn't show an actual line on the plan of, where the service would be. So they said, you have to update your Act 537 plan to address where this line is actually going to go, which properties are going to be served by it, and provide some alternatives analysis so we know this is the best way to serve this area. After some back and forth with DEP and the authority, DEP agreed that they could do a special sewage planning study. And that's what is before you now, that packet that was included in your documents for tonight. So it's a short review, kind of think of it as a mini Act 537 plan that just addresses this area. It gives a little background and an alternative analysis of why public gravity sewer is the best way to serve this area. Project description and implementation schedule, which is ASAP, because they already have a contract let for this project. How it's going to be financed, which is, in part they received a $200,000 grant from the state, and then the rest of it will be funded by PRA, and ultimately, they'll recoup some costs from connection fees. They included a map with it. If you go back a couple pages, called Exhibit 1, it shows a crosshatch where the line would be and shaded in parcels which could be connected. Keep in mind, this is, DEP wanted to know what the ultimate amount of properties could be connected to this line. That's why it's shaded all the way over to the bypass, even though they're not proposing to construct that little section right now. But by showing it in this plan, it alleviates the need when they do want to extend that line to go back through this whole process again.
Right.
There's also a couple properties which are a little bit off of Ridge Road, sort of like behind the frontage lot, that DEP wanted included in the project area for future potential to be connected. But again, it's not mandatory for them to connect. There's some letters attached in here from Percy, saying that they have the available capacity. Again, they're saying they have available capacity for 33 EDUs, which is all those properties that are shaded, even though there's only 20 some that are in the initial phase of construction.
Steve,
and then they sent this to, this had to be sent to you, the Township Planning Commission, the Bucks County Planning Commission, and then ultimately it's going to the Board of Supervisors. So it's here for your comment. Bucks County Planning Commission had it and commented that they think this is a good project and reasonable to serve these properties. It was also published in the newspaper for public comment. To my knowledge, we've received no public comments yet on the project. But again, these are all DEP requirements to get this special study area plan approved to allow this little sewer extension project to proceed.
Steve, is that pretty much the extent of what their service area is in the township, or does it extend well beyond this? As far as saying like north and south?
Well, it extends beyond because it goes all the way north to up Bethlehem Pike to Richland Township.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And it also goes across 309 on the north side of Ridge Road into the Almont Village area.
Gotcha.
This was a little bit of a questionable area for those of you that weren't around. At one time, this was intended to be served by Sellersville Borough. The Sellersville Borough never had any intent to ever extend their sewer, further than it is today. So then this area was transferred over to Percy instead of Sellersville.
So where and how is this going? Where it goes to it?
The gravity, it drains from Mountain View Road toward the police station. And in between the police station and the Percy Authority building, it goes to the rear of the properties and cuts through another property out to Bethlehem Road, Old Bethlehem Road, or Bethlehem Pike, I'm sorry.
Oh, Bethlehem, yeah. And then where's it go?
Into the Sellersville system.
Down at the park there.
Ultimately to the interceptor through Sellersville and to PWTA treatment plant.
Steve, just kind of a note here. Under the project description, it says it's a 3,850 lineal feet to the Route 309 bypass, but then in the proposed public notice letter, it says 3,650 lineal feet of 8-inch gravity. Now, I don't know if that matters, but it's 200 feet different.
Yeah, I don't know why there's a discrepancy, but I don't.
Or is that last 200 feet over at the bypass?
I think that's what it is, Tim.
Probably.
Okay.
But that's not as critical as.
Yeah, I didn't realize.
1,000 or 1,500 square feet, it would be a little bit different.
Okay.
How big a line are they putting in?
I believe it's just
8-inch
line. Which, don't be fooled, an 8-inch line can carry a lot of sewage. It's not the.
Yeah, it says 8-inch gravity sewer connected, the 3,650 lineal feet of 8-inch gravity sewer in the proposed public notice, first paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
And then the implementation schedule, it's starting July 15th, which is in 2 days.
As I said, they let the project before they found out that DEP threw this roadblock up. So kind of scrambling to get this paperwork done so they could cut the contractor loose to get started.
Nice. Nice.
So that their 30-day public comment period will be expired before the board meeting next week. That's why it was scheduled for your meeting and the board meeting. But everything sort of falls into place then.
Right. Well, I for one don't have a problem with it. Which side of the road is it going down?
The south side.
South side?
Yeah, some of it's off the road, some of it's in the lane, depending on what obstructions they had.
So Red Road's going to be a mess for a little while?
Yeah.
Excellent.
This is John. I raised this issue during the supervisors meeting that I think that if they're going through the effort, particularly if they're digging up Ridge Road that it's just recently been paved, that they should include all the houses and extend it all the way up to Washington Avenue and not just cut it off at Mountain View Road. So I see on the plan that they list that as the ultimate build out, but I think if they're going to dig up Ridge Road, they might as well dig up the whole thing once rather than do it in pieces.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds on that because I'm not 100% of how all their numbers work, but part of PRA's issue that they've explained to the township, is the grant funding they received is only for a certain size project. It's under their quote unquote small projects list. So they couldn't do a much more expansive project and still qualify for the grant monies that they have with this. Doesn't mean that they can't expand it or they can't expand it right away under a separate project, but that's part of the reason why this was chosen and it was limited in scope, was based on the funding they were able to get.
I understand, but to me, that's an accounting issue, not a construction issue. They, let the accountants and lawyers figure that part out. I think from a construction standpoint, it makes sense to do the whole thing at once.
It probably does.
Yes.
How about water?
I think there's water over there.
Water has already been extended to Mountain View. I believe it makes it all the way to Mountain View. They did that They did that before Ridge Road was repaved.
Right.
Why didn't they extend the sewer then? When it was torn apart.
I don't remember what the funding source was for the water. It might not have allowed for both.
I'm sure they didn't have the money.
I would assume that.
Yeah, I agree with John about they're going to rip it up. They should rip the whole thing up.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree with, but I'm sure there's some reasons behind it that they're not telling us.
Right. Now, again, remember, what you're making a recommendation on tonight is the service area in total, not necessarily what they're building this year and what they can build next year. But, your comments would be on, this is the total service area for this amendment to our plan. And if you're in agreement with that total service area, that's what you would indicate.
And again, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I don't think we have much of a choice since they already have the other side of 309, the west side of 309 to the north. I mean, it's, what do we not agree with it?
Yeah. I mean, we know that there are issues in this area just with the existing houses. So it does serve a viable purpose right away.
No, I agree wholeheartedly with that. It certainly needs to go in there.
So what do we need to do? Make a motion to approve the revised 537 plan?
Yeah, and then we'll put that into a letter form. We'll acknowledge that that was the action of the Planning Commission, so they could include it with their submission to DEP. But yeah, a motion to approve it would be fine.
It's John.
Tim, did you make that motion?
I did not, but I think John did.
No. All right. Can I get a second?
I'll
This is
second
Alex.
it.
Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Beat you.
Who gave the second? Tim?
Yes.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Anything else?
I don't have anything else today.
Public comment?
Public comment. Do we have any public comment tonight?
I don't have any public comments by email.
Okay.
All right, this is Jim Miller. I'd like to make a comment, but not until after you've adjourned the meeting. It's not a comment for the meeting.
Turn the recording off first.
Yeah.
Turn the recording off and. Okay. Any other public comment? All right. Hearing none, I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
I so
I'll
motion.
make a motion.
I'll
I
second
think
it.
three people made that motion, so who do we want to give it to?
Andy.
I'll give it to him. I heard him. He was allowed it. I get a second.
I'll second it.
I gave you the first.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Then I'll second. Chris, this is Andy.
Second. All fair.
Aye.
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 Aye. All right. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you. All right, Jim. What do you got?
I just want everybody to know that we did this in 2019. Last year we were shut down, but
Hang on
this
just
year-
a minute, Jim. Sherry, are we still recording?
Yeah, we are. And it's not official, so it's not officially